Okay, so it's that time of the week again where I take the decks I've been playing throughout the week and I give guides on them. Yes, I skipped the one with Token Shaman because it ended up just being bad. Multiple different iterations, just wasn't worth it. But this one's going to be good. This one, Odd Mage, is just absolutely phenomenal, and I'm going to just get right into it. This is broken up into three separate different parts. The first one being an overview of the deck, a second one being just general changes you can make to the deck to potentially make it better, and the third one being matchups and mulligans and a more in-depth guide on specific matchups. Close out games on its own. You have Leroy Jenkins help close out games. You have the Clockwork Automaton with the Daring Fire Eater turn 8 for 8 damage combo. But on top of that, you do have ways to close out games. You also just have straight up removal. Daring Fire Eater for 4 damage removal, single target. Arcane Missiles, Cinderstorm for wide boards. Explosive Runes to kill a minion before it even becomes a problem, especially if you can get it out on turn 3 with a Tor Mage comboed with the Explosive Ruins. And that just links right into the fact that this deck is fast. You can get out a 6 mana value on turn 3 with the Tor Mage, or coin out the Tor Mage on turn 2 and have a ton of value immediately. Make it very hard for them to deal with this specific card. You have a decent amount of 1-drops being Firefly, Dire Mole, and Secret Keeper, so odds are you'll have 1, and every other turn you're just going to be hero powering, and whenever you can hero power, actually, I'd recommend doing it. That way you can get the Dragonhawk pumped up as soon as possible. You also have a single Fungal Mancer, because this deck isn't as minion-based as some other ones like Odd Rogue, and just other decks that run Fungal Mancer like Odd Paladin. This deck has more spells, so you don't need as many, but it's still good to have 1. And yeah, this deck is a jack of all trades, but has a lot of ways to close out games and go aggro just in general. You can get a lot of value out of at least a turn 3 Tor Mage play, along with a lot of extra card draw from a 3/4 for 3 with an ability that says when your hero power kills a minion, draw a card. The Pyromaniac is crazy good. Maniac, crazy good. It kind of makes sense that those two things are linked, but on turn 5, you can play him and kill a thing off and draw a card. Or you can just play him for tempo on turn 3 because he's a 3/4 and will be incredibly hard to kill. There are just so many different options that this deck has. It can go so many different ways. The Black Cat synergizing well with Cinderstorm, Arcane Missiles, and Explosive Ruins just to make your early game control be a little bit better. Or late game, if you need an extra spell damage and hopefully hit them in the face with it, Black Cat can help you out with that too. There's just so many ways that this deck can go. It can go either control or aggro. And even some of the things like Explosive Ruins that are control are also aggro because it'll do damage to the opponent, and if you play with the Tor Mage, is just free value. This deck is actually just nuts. I really, really like it. It's one of the most popular decks in Legend right now. If you watched me play, of the 9 games you watched, 4 of them were Odd Mage of some variety, whether it be Odd Control or Odd Secret Mage. This deck is actually just incredible right now. One of the top decks, and I would recommend playing it. But I haven't even gotten to the changes yet, or the matchups and full guide, so stay tuned for all that. So the biggest change I would make to my personal deck is changing out the Mind Control tech. I'll explain why I use that in a second, for the Stargazer Luna. Stargazer Luna is just strictly a better card than the Mind Control tech. However, I put in the Mind Control tech because when I was playing against a lot of decks, I was playing against a decent amount of Odd Paladins and Secret Hunters at the time, and Mind Control tech was just another way to steal a wolf, or steal a 1/1 somehow, or just pull myself back into the game when things seemed grim. I could play a 3-mana card. It would be kind of a removal because I would steal something, and then I would also, on top of that, get just a 3/3 on the board. Or I could just play it as a 3/3/4/3 if absolutely needed as well. I didn't really lose any value out of it, so it was just a pretty decent card. But Stargazer Luna is definitely the better card because it gives you even more card draw. A card you could put in instead of the Mind Control tech as well is a second counterspell, because you have some secret synergy with the Secret Keeper and the Tor Mage. Having the counterspell can be pretty nice to have just in general. Having an extra one, I mean, especially when you play against spell-heavy decks. For example, the Control/Clone Priest deck. If you're able to get out a counterspell and they don't really have a coin to bait it out, you can counterspell a pretty important card for either of those decks. If you can get like a Holy Fire, the 5-mana heal 5 for the priest, if you could counterspell that, that is a huge swing. Absolutely incredible. And not only that, but if you could counterspell anything from any other deck, like counterspell turn 4 in preparation of a Spellstone on turn 5 and just have another counterspell, it could be a good card to tech. If you wanted to take out, say, like a Fungal Mancer, because this deck doesn't generally have a ton of minions on the board. He's useful, which is why you have one, but if you want to take him out for a counterspell, it's definitely something you could do. Or you could take out the Mind Control tech if you don't have Luna, put in a counterspell. I'd just say counterspell is the go-to replacement if you don't have one of the legendaries. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. Mind Control tech was a personal thing that I tried out. Didn't do super well, but the one hunter I did play against, it did steal a wolf, and I won. But I don't necessarily know if I won because of the wolf steal. But to be quite honest, of the past, like, 100 games I've played so far, 24% have been priest, and only about 15% have been hunter. The rest have been mage and paladin as well, primarily. So very few times will the mind control tech actually be useful. So I would definitely go with either Stargazer Luna or another counterspell if you're playing against a lot more priests like I have been. Last, but certainly not least, the matchups and just mulligan guides in general and a guide on the deck. This deck loses to Warrior. Just hard. The armor, there's no real way you can get around it. You can get Ragnaros, which can help, but a lot of the time he can just shield slam it, or if he's not even going odd, if he's going like just the weird quest warrior that's not odd based, he could also just execute it. So, or if he's going odd, he could also have the dragon that executes it as well. So it's a terrible matchup. Warlock is not the best matchup, but especially because of even Warlock, but it's not that bad. It can do pretty well into Mechathune because you don't have a ton of minions from the Spellstone. You have a lot of direct damage and surprise burst damage. And Ragnaros for 8 damage can help finish him off right at the end of the game. But I don't know. Other than that, there's Zoo Warlock, which is bad. I don't see why, actually, though. I think that Zoo Warlock isn't that great into this deck because you can hero power all this stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. And even Warlock has a ton of heal and big minions, and your deck, that's the one thing this deck struggles against, dealing with enormous minions. This deck can even deal with a wide board of small minions with the Cinderstorm and Arcane Missiles, and even hero power to slowly ping them off, but enormous minions this deck struggles against, and that's what even Warlock thrives on. Even Shaman is just not great for you at all. Just because I said that it can do okay into the wide board matchups doesn't mean that it necessarily does exceptionally well into them. It still struggles a decent amount because of the fact that even Shaman can get out huge things like a Sea Giant or eventually like a Lich King or a Kalamos, and this deck will just not know what to do to deal with it. But on top of that, it has a lot of just cheap minions that flood the board and eventually will make it hard for you to deal with. So another bad matchup for you, but all the other Shamans you beat. And like I said with the other one, even Warlock you lose to. All the other Warlocks you basically beat. Priest, you lose to Control Priest, but that's not that big of a deal. Just because of the fact that a lot of people are playing Clone Priest rather than Control Priest. And even when I say Control Priest is the only bad matchup, according to Hearthstone Replay, it's only 49.2. And personally, my matchup into Priest overall is like 50%, so it's not the worst. But it could be better. The Clone Priest this deck does beat, though, because you, again, don't have too many minions, so Psychic Scream doesn't hurt you as much. You have some surprising burst damage that can close out a game really fast where you can't really expect it. And if he plays like Ziliax, a lot of the time you might just play it but not have anything to attack because you don't have a minion on the board, which means that he's rendered useless. And then if you have like Arcane Intellect, you can just... Not Arcane Missiles, you can just maybe get off its Divine Shield and then ping it and it's dead anyway. Or if he kills a minion, you just ping it and it's dead anyway. Then you have Odd Rogue. Odd Rogue, not a great matchup for you just because he can get such big things out so quickly. But again, your hero power, for the same reason I don't think Zoo Warlock is that bad of a matchup for you, you can ping off all of his stuff. You can just do it. And obviously this deck is probably worse than Zoolock because it's just strictly better right now anyway. But I guess because his aggro is so insane, and if he's able to get something on like a decent minion, like a Cold Blood on a decent minion, it can be rough. And Leroy Jenkins surprises you, so you can't deal with that necessarily immediately, and you can't hero power and defend against his weapon because you have no taunt. So there are definite reasons why this matchup isn't good. But I don't think it's 42% like Hearthstone Replay says. I think that it is around 45 once you learn how to play the deck a little bit better. Mage. Odd Mage with the removal, not aggro, is your worst matchup at 50%. A little under 50, I'm rounding up from 49.8. Then Secret Odd Mage is your next worst at 50% because it's a mirror. And then you beat all of the other mages just because they deal with minions on the board. And like I just said, you don't necessarily have a ton of minions. Playing into Druid. This deck does well into all Druid, or at least the ones that are played, being basically just Mechathune Druid, because you can kill them off so quickly. And you have aggro, and that's basically what Mechathune Druid is bad against, aggro, or an OTK deck that can get to their OTK faster. So Smack's the one good Druid deck in the game right now, so you don't really have to worry about that matchup. Paladin, your worst matchup by far, like overall, other than Warrior. Sorry, Warrior's your worst matchup, but then overall, you lose to Even Paladin and Odd Paladin a decent amount because Even Paladin has big minions it's hard to deal with and constant 1-drops. Odd Paladin has a ridiculously wide board and some big minions of its own with Corridor Creeper that isn't necessarily huge but still hard to deal with, Frostwolf Warlord, and any giant taunt discovered by the Stonehall Defender. So, to be honest, Paladin's not a great matchup for you, but you do beat OTK because of how fast you are. Then you go to Hunter. Surprisingly enough, it says it loses to a lot of the Hunter decks except mid-range. But first of all, Spell Hunter, it says it's 31% popularity. I don't see Spell Hunter at all. We can take that out of the equation. Those Spell Hunters are replaced more with Mid-Range Hunter than Secret Hunter. I see more Mid-Range Hunter. Mid-Range Hunter into that, you have a 56% win rate into that deck, and Secret Hunter you have a 50% win rate into. The only Hunter deck that it was bad into is Spell Hunter, and like I said, that deck isn't played enough at higher ranks to really be a threat. However, if you're at ranks above 10, that could be an issue, but anywhere from like 10 down, I'm seeing like no Spell Hunters. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just my small sample size, about 300 games, 400 games. But in the grand scheme of things, not a ton of Spell Hunters. So Secret Hunter and Mid-Range Hunter are the two ones you have to worry about. If you play correctly and bait out secrets correctly and remove them after they're a threat and kill off a Scavenging Hyena early with your hero power or a Crackling Razor Maw and get some value out of that. If you learn how to play that matchup, it can be 50%. Mid-Range Hunter, you smack at 56%, and that's assuming you're not playing 100% optimally. So jumping into some of the mulligans, basically you want to keep 1-drops. You want to keep a Dire Maul, a Firefly, or a Secret Keeper. The other 1-drops don't count. You don't want to keep Arcane Missiles or Daring Fire Eater unless you're playing against Odd Paladin or like even Shaman, I guess, in which case Arcane Missiles might not be that big of a deal. And then generally speaking, you want to keep 1 3-drop as well. Whether it be Pyromaniac or Black Cat, one of those two ideally, or the Tor Mage and hoping you get a secret. That being said, if you only have like 1-drop, but you have the Tor Mage and a secret, that's fine. You don't have to get rid of the Tor Mage and a secret. That's a 6-mana value on turn 3. Just keep it. Just admit to yourself that turn 2 you have no other options other than to hero power him, and that's fine because your hero power is ridiculously strong, and just pass turn and then get a ton of value turn 3. The only reason why you want to have more than 1-drop is for options, but if you have a strictly better option in every way that gets you a huge advantage right off the bat, keep that, being the Tor Mage. Especially if your only 1-drop is a Secret Keeper, drop the Secret Keeper, coin the Tor Mage into Secret. Oh my god, that's so busted. It's so good. Other than that, you don't really want to keep any big things other than the Dragonhawk. Now, this one's up for debate, in my opinion. I've had some discussions with friends about it. I personally think it's a good thing to keep, especially if the coin, you can coin it out turn 6. You have it in your hand. You can guarantee play on turn 6. So you hero power a few extra times, help control the board, and then boom, you play it, can be a huge play. That being said, some people think it's too slow. They would rather have a lower cost card and potentially survive to 7, or if they need to, rush the person down before 7. So, I mean, there are arguments for both. Personally, I would keep it into a lot of matchups unless it's one where you might not actually survive. If you're playing into, I guess, like a Paladin, where you might not be able to hit them because of all his 1/1 Silverhand recruits, or an even shaman, or things that can get ridiculously wide boards, maybe not keep, or into super heavy aggro like Odd Rogue. But into most other, basically being priest and hunter, I'd keep it. But into, like I just said, Paladin and even shaman and Odd Rogue, I guess I would not. That's basically my general consensus on this one. And for an overall guide, what you want to do into aggro decks is to just use your hero power to control the board, gain a ton of value. If you can get out a Pyromaniac and draw 1, 2, maybe even 3 cards, if not more, off of him, can be absolutely insane, and you'll outvalue the aggro deck and just end up winning the game, especially if you're able to get a Dragonhawk out too. And then into control, rushing them down is definitely the way to go. So yeah, that's about it. If you guys enjoyed, see ya.